I want to talk to you about ICE and the protests around ICE in just a moment, but I want to talk to you first about Joe Biden's former physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor. He has pleaded the fifth, of course, that is the right to remain silent to avoid self-incrimination, in a closed-door House hearing, refusing to answer multiple questions about Joe Biden's health. He cited medical confidentiality and an ongoing DOJ probe, fueling claims, of course, of a cover-up. But he was asked, were you ever told to lie about the president's health? Did you ever believe that President Biden was unfit to execute his duty? And we didn't really get an answer. I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, what I make of this is that James Comer ought to do an immediate request to the Department of Justice to have him in contempt, criminal contempt, and of course, meet the same exact situation that Peter Navarro and Stephen Bannon had to deal with, which was 2 counts of criminal contempt, an indictment, a conviction, and 4 months in jail and imprisonment. And that's exactly what this doctor should have, because for him to go and say what he said, I understand the Fifth Amendment and everything else, and you don't have to be compelled to testify. But then again, you should be held in contempt and you should then go to jail for not testifying. That's exactly the same exact treatment that Stephen K. Bannon and Peter Navarro had to suffer from. So why can't Dr. O'Connor do the same?
Let's return to ICE. Right now, ICE agents are being targeted, and according to the Department of Homeland Security, attacks are up nearly 700%. We're seeing this in multiple places around the country, and tensions boiled over in San Francisco as protesters clashed with ICE agents outside the city's immigration courthouse. Let's just take a look. ICE agents and other federal law enforcement officers were targeted in at least 2 ambushes in Texas in recent days, and the President, Donald Trump, has blasted these attacks and has called for long jail sentences for those involved.
And what do you think the penalty should be for these people who are, if they are found guilty, for people who shoot at ICE officers?
Very, very stiff. Very stiff. A long time in jail, a long time. And one got hit yesterday in the neck, and he fortunately is going to be okay, but he got hit yesterday in the neck. No good.
Donald Trump also made the point that when masked protesters swarmed Harvard University, there was no outrage, but a patriotic ICE agent wears one for safety, and suddenly that's a big scandal. And of course, that's the Democrat double standard for you. What are your thoughts on what's happening to ICE agents?
Well, it's obviously terrible that this is happening to these law enforcement agents. I'll fill in the blanks of what President Trump didn't say. What he's referring to is U.S. Code 181113, which is attempted murder of an ICE officer or a federal officer in general. And that is a 20-year stiff penalty in jail. And so when he says very, very stiff, that's exactly what he's talking about. And I believe that's exactly what the Department of Justice is going to put forward for these folks that are attacking ICE officers. An attempted murder charge is 20 years in prison. We've got to stop this violence against these ICE officers. You know, we just passed the One Big Beautiful Bill. $170 billion has gone to border enforcement and immigration, including the hiring of at least 10,000 additional ICE agents, which subsequently is going to make more ICE arrests and more ICE agents viable and visible in a lot of these different blue cities around the country. So they're going to need to get used to it. And we need to start setting precedent by arresting these folks that attack ICE agents and then saying publicly what the punishment will be.
Well, it's interesting, even left-wing outlet CNN were forced to report that it's clear the majority of Americans back Donald Trump's deportation policy and want to see every illegal immigrant deported. Let's look at this.
Deport all immigrants who are here illegally, 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is a very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because they're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters.
Yet the left are fighting against this.
Yeah, it's amazing Harry Enton can keep his job because he is definitely souring some people's minds over there at CNN, the 17 viewers that essentially are still watching that horrible channel. But I digress. What I would say, though, is this. Those are more than likely registered voters rather than likely voters. So you can actually add 10%, maybe even 12% to all of those numbers. So they're actually even much higher than what's even being reported. Look, the bottom line is this president won this election based on the #1 issue, which was, of course, immigration enforcement and closing down the border. And that is exactly what this president has been able to do in record time, I might add, as well. So the American people are still solidly for immigration enforcement, regardless of what some of these radicals on the left think.
Let's turn to the devastating flooding in Texas. The search for more than 170 people still missing continues as flash floods devastated central Texas, and that search has stretched into a 6th day as the death toll continues to rise. At least 120 people have been confirmed dead, according to local law enforcement. And it is absolutely heartbreaking. Right here in Australia, we're thinking of everyone who's been impacted. What has also made headlines here in Australia is Coast Guard rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin, who is being hailed a hero after his first mission, helping to save the lives of 165 people. And we have to say a huge thank you to Scott, the US military, first responders, and all volunteers, brave Americans who are putting themselves at risk to save others.
Absolutely. Look, the first thing that I will say is my thoughts and prayers go out to all of the victims in Texas. Kerrville was really, really hit bad, more than such other areas, although a lot of areas around Kerrville were hit as well. But, you know, that's just one story. There's multiple stories out there of heroism and patriotism and people just, you know, getting together and helping out their fellow neighbors. You know, they're not doing what FEMA did and looking for signs in the front yard, okay? They're actually helping these people. They want to make sure that these people are being saved and are being rescued. And, you know, there was one story of a young man who saved his entire family and then sadly drowned, but he did save his entire family. So the amount of sacrifice that we are seeing in Texas and elsewhere is just overwhelming. It's just amazing. And it just shows the heart and soul of the people of Texas and people around the country that really, truly do care.
Yeah, absolutely. Flash flooding has also devastated the mountain village of Rodeso and killed at least 3 people in southern New Mexico, triggered by an intense monsoon rains. Rushing floodwaters swept away homes. Some of the vision is unbelievable. Look at this.
Oh, there comes the house.
Oh my gosh, y'all look.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh.
On the other side of that one right there.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that before. Just want to end on a final note. It's official that the UFC has confirmed President Trump's plan to host a fight on the White House grounds to commemorate America's 250th anniversary. The event is expected to draw 20,000 spectators and will be part of a series of celebrations dubbed America 250. Are you excited about this, Josh?
Yeah, I am. I think it's really interesting. You know, I know that I think his name is James Jones. He was the GOAT or the champion of UFC, and he recently retired. And he should come out of retirement for one last fight just for this event. I think that would be spectacular. But look, you know, some people are trying to say, oh, this is the Roman Empire, and this is what happens at the end of the empire and everything else. That's just not the case. We know that President Trump has been a lifelong boxing fan, a lifelong UFC fan. He's good, close friends with with Dana White. And so this is just another way to celebrate masculinity, if you will, and the way of the golden age in America. So I think it's going to be a huge, huge hit, and I can't wait to see it.
Josh Bernstein, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, any topic.